Now, this last story related to food, GMOs, pesticides is, I think, one of the biggest stories to happen this week. And another one that, I mean, this is, although I don't really pay much attention to the mainstream, I do keep up with it. I don't watch it. I keep up with it peripherally. Like for instance, I wake up Sunday today and I search, okay, what's going on with the Sunday, news shows, the Sunday programs where they usually have lately they've been having all the presidential candidates and stuff on. So I want to see what they're talking about. And then I look to see what they're ignoring and what angles they're not sharing with people. And then I can find, well, okay, this is what people need to look at. It just helps me with my work. But to me, the story we're about to cover right now should be on the front page. I mean, this should be, I said the same thing about the CDC whistleblower who's talking about vaccinations, and whether or not you think the guy's full of shit or not, it doesn't matter. He's a CDC scientist, works at a government agency, has admitted to lying, is now taking up lawyers, whistleblower lawyers. A congressman has come out and spoke about it, said his office has documents on this stuff, and not a peep from the media. Not a peep from any of the other people working. And that to me is disturbing, but it is the situation we are in. Now, this story, I feel similarly. This should be on the front pages. This should be on all the Sunday morning news talk shows, political shows, asking why is a researcher, a scientist at the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, saying that he is being silenced when it comes to pesticide research. This is for the anti-media. As of this morning, it's got 12,000 shares through Facebook. Not bad. Hopefully it'll get more. On Wednesday, a researcher with the United States Department of Agriculture filed a whistleblower complaint alleging his supervisors suspended him in retaliation for his research on pesticides. The complaint follows calls for an investigation of both the USDA and the Environmental Protection Agency. According to the Washington Post, Jonathan Lundgren, an entomologist and 11-year veteran of the USDA's Agricultural Research Service, filed the complaint with the Federal Merit Systems Protection Board after his supervisors allegedly began to, quote, impede or deter his research and resultant publications. He is well known in the scientific community for previously alleging the USDA attempted to prevent him from speaking about his research for political reasons. The Washington Post reported, quote, the trouble began after you published research and gave interviews about the impact that certain common pesticides were having on pollinators, bees. According to a statement by Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, or PEER, which filed the complaint on his behalf, the whistleblower complaint says Lundgren's work showed the adverse effects of certain widely used pesticides, findings which have drawn national attention as well as the ire of the agricultural industry. So he's pissing some people off. The USDA says Lundgren was suspended for submitting research to a scientific journal without proper approval, and that he violated official travel policies related to lectures he gave in Philadelphia and Washington. Lundgren's complaint says the article's submission was not inappropriate, and he called the travel violations a paperwork error. He's previously published a study that found soybean seeds pre-treated with neonicotinoid pesticides, quote, offered little benefit to soybean producers. He also served as a peer reviewer in a report published by the Center for Food Safety. That study found further evidence that neonicotinoids adversely affect bees. Laura Dumas, staff counsel for PEER, condemned the USDA's decision to suspend the scientist, saying, having research published in prestigious journals and being invited to present before the National Academy of Sciences should be sources of official pride, not punishment. Politics inside the USDA have made entomology into a most dangerous discipline. One of his peers, Scott W. Fausti, recently published a paper in Environmental Science and Policy, and in that paper he wrote a footnote. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Jonathan Lundgren's contribution to this manuscript. Dr. Lundgren is an entomologist employed by the USDA. However, the USDA has required Dr. Lundgren to remove his name as a joint first author from this article. I believe this action raises a serious question concerning policy neutrality towards scientific inquiry. Several scientists coming out, speaking out about this. And this is not the first time the USDA has been called out for putting politics before science. In early May of this year, Truth in Media reported that 25 organizations representing farm workers, food safety organizations, and the environment sent a letter to officials with the USDA and Environmental Protection Agency. They called for investigation into claims that scientists are facing pressure and retaliation for research that presents the controversial neonicotinoid insecticide in a negative light. The group said they were concerned about a report from Reuters that detailed threats to scientists who speak about the dangers of the pesticide. So this is interesting because Reuters first reports that there's murmurs about scientists, whispers of scientists saying they're being threatened, their work's being pushed away related to pesticides, and also specifically related to genetically modified crops. And they say they face backlash, and specifically talking about the neonicotinoid pesticides. And these are the ones that have more and more been linked to not only harming bees and other pollinators, but rivers and birds and worms. I found, there's lots of research out there. And so again, these are pesticides that are increasingly, and insecticides that are increasingly used because of the rise of genetically modified crops and the rise of corporatism involving companies like Monsanto and Syngenta. And the neonics have been around since the early 1990s, and they've been linked, as I said several times, to bee colony collapse disorder, and it goes on from there. I want you to read this whole article. I give several examples of these studies showing that these pesticides are just horrible. And we have to ask ourselves, how can we shift away from pesticide use and reliance on corporatism and still remain able to feed ourselves and to have a national food industry that can still trade with other people and grow strong. And I think that is possible, but we have to sort of look to the past as we're moving forward, use technology that we have now to cultivate crops and be more creative. Permaculture, vertical gardens. I mean, we've got shipping container gardens. You have underground gardenings. We have to utilize the technology that is available to us and the minds that are available to us. Pull out the government roadblocks, and stop supporting this corporatism. Localize, decentralize. These are the answers. They make sense in all areas of our life, but they absolutely make sense when it comes to our food production. Recognize that. Remember, resistance is fertile and the revolution is growing.